Money cannot buy the honor which you have earned tonight.
Hey, what's up everyone? Today we're going to do a spoiler review about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles The Last Ronin Issue 2, First to Fall. If you've seen my previous spoiler reviews, we go into every nook and cranny, so this is going to be a long one. Buckle in, grab a couple slices of pizza, and let's talk about this new book that just dropped. So the story starts off just like the 5-page preview that was released to the public, and that has April O'Neil, now in the future, older, laying down in bed, staring up at the ceiling, thinking about something. You can see tears are coming out of her eyes. As we remember, the preview kept going with now a flashback of her and Casey Jones talking to each other, and it looked like Casey had just proposed to her and they were about to have a big dinner, letting the Turtles know that they were going to get married. When all of a sudden, Raph runs into the room covered in blood and clears the dinner table, and we saw Michelangelo and Donatello dragging in a bloodied Splinter who is like semi-conscious, and they threw him up on the table. April indicates that what they're seeing is bad, that they need to focus on what wounds are the most dangerous. And this is a brutal opening to the comic. You just see a bunch of blood everywhere, and Casey and April are trying to figure out what happened. I like the way this one starts off with a bang like this. Although, as I mentioned in my non-spoiler review, there are some moments where this one breathes a little bit, and we'll get to that in a second. But Mikey explains to Casey and April that a large Foot Clan strike team jumped them as they came out of the sewers. This scene just seems like really chaotic. There's a bunch of things going on at the same time. You even hear Splinter mutter out a word. He says Leonardo, but he barely gets it out. And it's just fitting for the character of Splinter to just be thinking of his sons even as he's dying. And yeah, Splinter's just worried because everybody's there except for Leonardo. Mikey gets in close with Splinter, holding his hand, and just tells him Leonardo was the rear guard, making sure everybody got clear. And you just see the look on Mikey's face. He just looks so sad. I can almost hear him delivering this dialogue here. I love the way they drew this one. I think these flashbacks were drawn by Ben Bishop. And I think the future stuff, the present day stuff, was drawn by the Escorza brothers. And we'll get to that in a minute here. Casey just snaps and he says, "Screw that. Come on, Raphael, let's go make sure Leo got clear." And as we can tell from the character of Casey up until this point, and we've only gotten a little bit of him so far, but it seems like he had cleaned up his act. He's cut his long hair, he's wearing a tie, and he's settling down. But it seems like this brings out the old Casey in him. And it's right here where Raph says, "Damn straight, it's body count time." A nice nod to the old body count comic. Now this is where the preview ended, where Raphael says they're going to find out how big of a mistake they made. A voice comes in from out of frame and it says, "Stand down, Raph." And as we predicted, it's Leonardo entering the room. And he looks cool. They got him wearing a big trench coat. He's got the 2 crossed diagonal belts that go across his chest. This was probably my favorite part of the comic. The way they wrote Leo here and the way he conducts himself, he goes straight into like leader mode. He starts giving an update on what happened, saying that they're good for now and that the rest of the foot might be running towards the east side, the docks maybe. This is when Raphael says, "What about the truce, Leo? I thought we got past all this with them." And this reminded me of the end of the old Mirage Volume 1 comics when they make the truce with Karai and the Foot Clan at the end of City at War. I feel like this is why they were saying stuff like this heavily leans on the Mirage universe, or it was largely inspired by those turtles, is probably things like that. We're probably going to see or hear more things about the past that the Mirage Turtles went through that'll make us be like, "Oh yeah, I remember when the Mirage Turtles did that." But at the same time, this is sort of its own thing. So yeah, I would expect more things like that in the upcoming issues. Now, it's not explained why the truce was broken. Leo just says, "I'm honestly surprised it lasted as long as it did." And then we even hear Splinter get out another few words as he says, "This war, just matter of time. Oroku against Hamato, always. Karai trying to end it once and for all." And that's when everybody starts looking around the room and notices Raph's gone. We jump back to the present or the future, and we see that April is getting out of bed and she is missing a leg and she is missing an arm. She's gone through something, and we get clues later on that it was a part of this attack. We see her putting on a robotic arm, and then as she's trying to put on her robotic leg, she accidentally drops it. And she yells out, "Hey Casey, a little help here?" And we see Casey Jones's mask and hockey sticks sitting in the corner. But we don't actually get to see Casey. We actually end up seeing somebody else. But before we get to that, it cuts to Michelangelo, or the last Ronin, in the kitchen. And he looks like he's up and about now. He just has some bandages on him, but he's up and about, and he's lighting up the stove to boil up some tea. And we look over at the table and we see the ghosts of his 3 dead brothers sitting there talking to him. And this is probably the most detailed drawing we've gotten of all the turtles together from the Scorza brothers, and they look cool. And I don't know how they pulled it off. Maybe it's because we're doing time jumps, but all the different art styles from like the other artists at the flashbacks and then these artists here in the present, they all seem to flow pretty good together. It's not too jarring. And this is where we get a clue of what might have happened to April. You hear one of the brothers say, "This whole April still being alive thing is nuts, huh?" And then Leonardo says, "Yeah, hard to believe anyone survived that." Michelangelo says, "The last thing I remember was the explosion," and then he proceeds to blow out a match. So I'm assuming he got caught up in the blast somehow. And he says he was out of it pretty bad, and that when he finally came to, he couldn't remember anything for days. Then Raphael, or the spirit of Raphael, tries to make light of it by saying, "I kind of missed that one, I guess." Obviously because he had ran off, how we just saw in the flashback. And then the 3 brothers, not Mikey, they all start arguing with each other about, Raphael leaving or whatnot. And Michelangelo's just sitting there hearing it all. And as the tea kettle starts whistling, it all just kind of is too much for him to take in at once, and he snaps. And he throws the tea kettle and he says, "You always make our entire life about you," talking to Raphael. He says, "I fought every battle you have, even the idiotic ones you started, and you still want to judge me. You knew what my mission was in the tower, a one-way ticket from the start, for our father, for our family, for our honor." And then it shows the table again, and the brothers are no longer there. They've vanished. So to an outside person, he just looks like he's yelling at voices in his head. There's nobody there. And it just really hits right here just how alone Michelangelo is. I find it interesting what he said though earlier. He says, "You knew what my mission was in the tower, a one-way ticket from the start." When I had first read this, I thought he was talking about something in the past. I was thinking like, tower, they must like go on some type of suicide mission after Raph disappears or whatever. But I think he's talking about what he had just done in the previous issue here in the present, in the future, where he went up to Shredder's grandson's tower and fell off of it. Because he says right after this, "Look, I should be dead. The fall should have killed me, but it didn't." And we actually kind of find out why in a minute. Anyways, he says, "I'm still here, still alive to fight. I lost the battle, but the war goes on." And then you see the hands of his ghost brothers return, and they all raise a glass, and Michelangelo raises a glass back to them. And that's that image that was teased to us a few weeks back. So the story cuts back to the past at this point, and we see Raphael with rage in his eyes jumping across rooftops. He even does a pose in one of the jumps that's very similar to the pose he's doing in issue 2 of the original comics back in the day. Eventually, he jumps down into the subway. We even get a funny cameo here from Peter Laird and Kevin Eastman, who are eating a pizza, and say, "Did you see that?" Underground, Raphael finds a foot soldier. He grabs him and starts hurting him and says, "Where's Karai?" You see later that he killed him and left him on the ground. Then it cuts to the docks and we see Karai. She has a bunch of foot soldiers ready to go, and she's talking to them. She says, "I gave you one simple command. Kill the mutants. The truce between the Foot and Hamato clans has been broken. Blood has been spilled." Now, they don't reveal the motivation on why blood was spilled. Did the turtles accidentally kill somebody that was a part of the Foot, or did the Foot just all of a sudden one day decide to break the truce because they were up to something even bigger that they thought maybe the turtles would interfere? I'm not sure if they're going to reveal that. They might just leave it vague like this. Let me know down below what you think. Anyways, you hear Raph say there's no turning back now. And he just walks into a crowd of Foot Clan and starts slicing them up. He's doing flips through the air, just stabbing people as he's flipping. It's a bloody situation. Chaos just erupts, and you see Karai say, "So be it. Destroy the beast." And we actually get a good look at some elite guards here, and I like the way they look. They look pretty cool. As Raph's fighting, you see him, he starts getting hit with spears and arrows, blood splattering everywhere, but he's also killing people as he's going. The elite guards try to come at him already as he's weakened, but he appears just to shred straight through them. They do some damage though on him. But yeah, he seems to tear through them pretty quick, and then Karai jumps down. And now Raphael's just covered in arrows and he's bloody. There's like arrows going through his leg, going through his arm, like all the way through. And he just has to fight like this. And him and Karai just start fighting. They just start going at it. I think at one point Raph gets stabbed like underneath his arm by one of her swords, but then he stabs her in the arm with one of his sai, and then they both, as they're fighting, fall off the dock and into the water. The fight continues briefly underwater, and you see Karai slip her hand down and grab a kunai that is strapped on Raphael's leg. She pulls it off, and just as Raph is about to stab her in the back with his sai, she at the same time stabs him in the neck with the knife. And it kind of looks like the type of stab that is like underneath the chin and goes up into the brain, or it could just be a stab in the neck, but either way, Raphael dies here. And the last thing he sees as he's reaching up is his sai floating away from him. Although with his other sai, he did stab Karai in the back with that one, and she, unconscious now, floats away as well. So it looks like we just got a reveal of how Karai ended up in that comatose state that she's in the present. Also, now we know how Raphael died. We jump back to the present with Michelangelo and April. April's surprised that he's up and about walking around. She says, "Michelangelo, what the heck are you doing up?" And it's a good question because he took a bad fall in the first issue, and they do address it a little bit here, how he's up and about. He says, "I'm still trying to process it all. That fall would have killed me when I was younger." And then she says, "I'm no Donatello, but it doesn't take a genius to see your mutation has progressed over the years. You're bigger, stronger, and you're healing amazingly fast." So it looks like they're playing with the idea of his mutation continuing to change him as he gets older, which was an idea that they always played around with. I believe even before they did the show The Next Mutation, they actually were going to do a movie called The Next Mutation, where the turtles all keep mutating because of the mutagen in their system. And this was back in the 90s, so maybe this is an old idea that they've always wanted to play around with. Then April yells for Casey and yells, "Breakfast is ready." And we see that young girl walk into the room who saved Michelangelo in issue 1. So this is Casey and April's daughter, whose name is Casey Jones, named after her father, obviously. Would have been cool if they would have went with Shadow, but still we predicted that this was going to be April and Casey's daughter, and yes, that's what it is. And Mikey's kind of confused. He says, "Casey?" And she says, "Yep, that's me." And then she says, "And you're supposed to be the funny one, right?" We'll get back to her in a minute as the story in this point cuts to Shredder's grandson, Oroko Hiroto, who is training with foot soldiers in his tower. He's yelling at his foot soldiers. He says, "I said show me a decent fight. Kill me, cowards, or I will have you killed." And then they all start coming at him and he's taking them all on. The next part just shows off how evil he is as one of the foot soldiers gets a hit in on him and hits him with a stick. Everyone stops fighting and he says, "Excellent strike, almost masterful." And then he says, "Unfortunately for you, there is only one master," and he pulls out a knife and slices the guy's throat. And so the fighting lesson ends. Next we see Oroku Hiroto ask his captain for a full update. This is also another page that was teased to us weeks ago, and we saw that he tells his captain to pretty much turn the city upside down to find the last Ronin and to remember what happened to the last captain that didn't get this job done. And we see his head on a pike and crows are eating the flesh off of it. We jump back to Mikey and April, who, by the way, I don't think I mentioned it earlier, are in the turtles' old home. It looks like April started living here after everything had gone down. Anyways, they explain to Mikey that the place in the city that they are located in is called Rock Bottom, now that New York's been split up into 3 different districts. There's top, middle, and bottom. Young Casey even says Rock Bottom is the battlefield and the rest of us underground, we're the resistance. So something's going on here that April's a part of. She even says, which we'll tell him about after he gets more rest. And she seems kind of annoyed that young Casey's kind of spilling the beans here. Anyways, young Casey takes Michelangelo on a tour of like her workout area where they have all the training equipment. And she says she's learned a lot just through old training videos and reading. So I think we're going to get to see her fight alongside the last Ronin at one point. I don't know why, I kind of get the feeling that a team is kind of going to get built around him. She takes him over to where all of the stuff that he was carrying is laid out, the old turtle weapons and then Splinter's book, which she wants to know more about. It's all in Japanese, but she doesn't understand it enough. But she does understand a little bit to know that there's special lessons and techniques in the book that she wants to learn. Then she asks the million-dollar question, where have you been all this time? He says, after all the bad stuff that happened, It was too much to handle, so I just started walking. And we jump to a flashback, but this time the flashback is drawn by Kevin Eastman, and it's all in black and white, and it looks just like the old Mirage comics. It shows Mikey walking into the mountains. It's all snowing and stuff. He even says, I'd seen photos of snow-covered mountains, but never set foot on one. And being cold-blooded, I didn't have a chance. So I found a place to meet my end. And he arrives at what looks like almost like those Japanese symbols that look like an arch with like two bars going across. It looks like somebody had built one there in the past and he stumbled across it just now. So I think he took it as a sign as this is a spot probably where he's gonna die. It shows him laying down. It says days, a week. He says maybe longer. He says, I don't know how long I laid there, but my mutant body would not die, and that he started hearing voices telling him that his destiny was incomplete. Now, this is interesting because this is a big development on the Turtles. Like, he's out there, laying there for days, weeks, maybe longer, like you said, and he's not dying. Probably hasn't eaten. So we're finding out new things about their mutation here. Eventually, things got warmer, and then it shows him sitting there meditating. He read and reread Splinter's book, looking for some type of balance, and that he spent years alone thinking that that was where he was supposed to be. You see that he starts fishing and stuff to get food, planting crops, but one day the real world found him again. You see that some humans stumble upon him one day and they yell monster and they say freak, kill it. It looks like at first he let them beat him. He says he welcomed the pain. At least he felt something after all that time, but that then he saw the look on their faces, laughing, taking a life just to take a life for fun. No honor, and that's when he got mad. And then it shows a scene of all of them presumably dead, laying all around him, and him just standing there exhausted. And that then he realized that his destiny was on the battlefield to the end. And it shows him walking away back to civilization. It shows him turning into a savage after this, fighting a bunch of different enemies and stuff, and standing on top of all the ones he's killed, almost like in a Thunderdome type thing. And then he says, my training reached its end, and it shows him getting on a boat, which looks like an international boat, so he might have went international on this training. He says there would be no peace until he fulfilled his destiny, that it was time to come home and face it, to complete his master's mission and kill the last Oroku. Then young Casey says, good, because my crew's gonna help you. And then Mikey wants no part of it. He says no. And then she says, too bad, because I wasn't asking. Mikey gets a kick out of this because it reminds him of Casey. We finally arrive to the end of the story, which is actually quite interesting and something I wasn't expecting. It's actually quite a wild curveball that could have some crazy ramifications in the story. We just don't know what it's going to be. On the last page, we see April, and she's walking up to a safe. She opens the safe and pulls out Fugitoid's head. And so now let the speculation begin, because we don't know what's going to happen. Is Fugitoid still alive? If booted, could he become a great ally to Michelangelo or somebody else's conscious inside of the Fugitoid? Or does he have plans to some type of weapon that Oroku Hiroto has? We don't know. That's what we're gonna have to wait for and see, but leave your theories down below at the bottom, letting us know what you think is going to happen with this. This is probably the biggest like, whoa, what the heck moment in the entire book. And I feel like a lot of people might not know what or who this is, because a lot of us here on the channel know who the Fugitoid is, but I feel like this book got so popular that it got a lot of casual Ninja Turtle fans who might not know who the Fugitoid is invested in this book. And if you're one of those and you're watching this video, this is a big deal, because this is one of the Turtles' friends that is incredibly smart and super resourceful. But it's weird that it's just his head. That's why I wonder if he's even still alive, or if there's somebody else's consciousness maybe uploaded to his memory or whatever. That's just something we're gonna have to wait and see. But that's it for this spoiler review. My overall thoughts, I thought this was great. A good follow-up to the first issue. It's different though, and I like that. I like that it's not like the first issue. It's a different pace, but good in its own way. And I think I'm always gonna remember this as the book that had like 3 different distinct art styles for the Turtles that all worked so well together, and it just flowed perfectly with the story. At least to me. It might be jarring to some people, but I like the way they stitched it all together like that. What would be even crazier, and I don't think it's gonna happen, but I'm just gonna throw this out there, it would be crazy like if on the last issue, if the last page is drawn by Eastman and Laird, just the last page. That'd be cool, because I don't think Laird does any stuff anymore, but it'd be cool if they get him to do like the final page with Eastman and they draw it together how they used to draw the old comics together. That would be insane. I could see fans just absolutely losing their minds if that happened. But thank you everybody for stopping by. I hope you enjoyed this breakdown. Let me know what you think down below in the comments. What are your theories? We'll start covering issue number 3 now that all the stuff is starting to come out on it, so stay tuned for that. If you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button because you're not going to want to miss any of that. Thanks everybody for watching. I will see you in a little bit with another video. Take care.